All right. And I think we are live. Hello, everybody. Great to be back live today with Mark and Savo today. We'll do quick introductions and then, we'll get right into it. And so, Mark, if you want to start.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, Mason. Hey, Savo. Glad to be here today. Uh, I'm Mark. I'm the CTO here at Pieces. I do a lot of different things, mainly work on Pieces OS, but I also have the pleasure of working closely with product and ML as well. Do a lot with Savo with regard to planning and future tech and all that fun stuff.
Lots of planning, lots of future
yeah.
tech going on. Yeah. Mason, thanks for kind of being the moderator today. We got some AMA about the live context. We're gonna get into what's under the hood a little bit. I'm Savo Knott, CEO and technical co-founder here at Pieces. And apologies in advance. My voice is a little bit under the weather, but we're doing all right. I think it's just the hot days and the good old pollen 1-2 punch right there. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it has been extremely humid here in Cincinnati where the Pieces HQ is. And hey, everybody, Mason Williams, see me probably just about everywhere we do live streams or events. But excited to do this one as well. I'm a software engineer, but across all of our community and open source. But I think that we want to start off just getting right into it. There's a lot to talk about here, especially around the security aspect. A lot of people are wondering what really is going on behind this. It's an amazing feature. Maybe Savo, you can give a really high level, and then we can kind of drop down into the fun parts.
For sure. We'll actually do a pretty advanced demo here today and kind of take people through the journey of Pieces and its evolution. But at the highest level, we've really just continued to beat the drum on accomplishing productivity across the entire developer journey, right? And what I mean by that is the day-to-day work that you're doing in the pillars of browser, the IDE, and the collaborative environment, right? And if you think about those three pillars, they actually have so much overlapping context and so many dots that are related to the things that you're shipping, how you're building, and the improvements that you're making to your services and software every single day. But those dots are uncaptured, right? They're largely uncaptured. And so a couple of years ago when we started out, I really started with, what does it look like to make it super easy for developers to save kind of small materials, have those materials deeply enriched in the context that they were saved from, have them organized and kind of indexed for search and suggestion, reference, reuse, and sharing later on. And that was phase one, which is really about humans saving something to pieces. And then we got into phase two, which is kind of, aligned with the advent of large language models. And that actually created an interesting loop where people come in, they use something like ChatGPT, the Pieces Copilot, Gemini, whatever large language model it is, and they generate code. But oftentimes that code they generate is not perfect out of the gate. So they kind of iterate and they go back and forth. They massage the prompts a little bit, they adjust the outputs and so on. And then they finally get what they're looking for and they move to a curate motion. And so we saw this kind of, dawning of an generate, iterate, and curate loop where from the conversations you're having with copilots, you end up wanting to save, snippets out of those conversations. That was phase two, right? So for everything you have inside of Pieces, can Pieces, use that context to ground the models, understand the languages you write in, the projects you work on, and the type of code you're looking for to not only generate better outputs, but also have a place to then save from those generated outputs themselves. And that was phase two, right? The generative phase. And so that's also creating a lot of materials. But now we're in phase three, which aims to solve a problem of phase one and phase two. And that problem was developers oftentimes don't realize that they should have saved something until they realize they didn't save it. And this is a challenge, right? Because then you're back to square one. What website was it on? Who was I talking to about it? What project was it in? When was I working on it? And so on. And this is a muscle you have to build, right? That note-taking muscle, that identification of, I'm going to need this later. So I'm going to go ahead and proactively anticipate that need and save it. We said, it takes time to build that muscle, but everyone needs the value of that muscle right away. And so we started setting out on this ambitious journey to build the workstream pattern engine. The vision's, kind of origin is all the way back to phase one. We're like, all right, this is great. Humans can save, but really it would be awesome if Pieces could save for you. And then we started doing all the incremental technological supply chain components, getting that stuff really great for on device, really great for privacy and security, which we'll talk about. And over the past roughly 11 months, we've really turned this thing into a reality on Mac OS, Linux, and Windows. And so in short, what the Workstream pattern engine does is it basically shadows you across these pillars that I mentioned, the browser, the IDE, and the collaborative environment, to identify what you might need later, create a pattern of overlapping kind of topics, time spans, and material types, and then save that stuff. And the end result for us right now is a first feature built on top of it called Live Context, which I'll go ahead and demo. And yeah, we'll get into, how do we figure out what to save? How do we identify like, okay, this is a thematic pattern. You're working on unit testing, you're working with this package, and you're working in Dart. What's the overlapping topic space there that we know you're maybe going to reuse in the future or want to double tap on at a later point. But yeah, before I get into demo stuff, Mark, Mason, any other thoughts on that? I know we talk a bunch about it in the company. Everyone kind of has their own perspectives, but that's kind of the high level, investor thesis, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mason.
I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, I was using it literally earlier today, like fixing up this SDK that I have. And it's great because, I mean, the real value that I see right off the bat is there's no need to manually add any information that I think it may need. It's just going to gather what's recently, relevant. And then based on my query, obviously, it's going to even get more relevant information around that. And it's super great because I was like, obviously it doesn't know what's going on, right? And I'm like, hey, I just had this error. Can you help me fix it? Boom, answer. It even like gives me some explanations and 1, 2, 3 step to resolve. And that saved me probably, at least 5 minutes, definitely, and even more if I tried to Google it and going through Stack Overflow, all of that. No one does that anymore. And so it really does bring that other knowledge, essentially. I know we were talking about it we were in a call with an IDE company. And the big thing that I think that Live Context kind of brings is obviously, yes, I want to add that context of a code file, but I also want to get the context from a conversation I was having with a team member about that code, right? And I want to get the conversation from the PR about that code as well. So there's all these little bits that add the key bits that we're missing outside of the actual resource itself that this is able to grasp. That's the big thing for me.
Yeah, and I love that, Mason. It gets my brain turning specifically around that collaborative space and capturing those conversations. One of those is like, hey, I'm on a Google Meet with Mason and Savo, and we're talking about Live Context. You turn on your closed captioning and you ask to summarize it, or you ask anything about it to give some meeting notes to other individuals that may have missed the meeting. And you're ready to go. It's not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction, and it really helps solve like a massive problem that people are having. For instance, just yesterday, a user, I can't remember if they commented on Twitter or somewhere on social media, and basically what they were asking about is, all right, all these LLMs are behind, but I want to use updated documentation. So one of the ways we solve it is with Live Context. So if you're scanning through those docs, or if you looked at them before, we can basically just use that to go ahead and ground the LLMs, so that basically we don't have to wait 6 months until any sort of LLM has all of the updated data that they need. But they can use the updated stuff right there in real time. 100%.
Mason, I was just gonna kind of add to that, and Mark, you kind of foreshadowing the demo a good bit there, but what's more up to date than the recent files that have changed on your operating system, the stuff that's going on at the network level or at the foreground level that you're looking at or have looked at, in recent time spans. And Mason, to your point, even setting context manually for a large language model, you have to be conscious. You have to realize like, oh, it might need this detail when I'm referencing like this part of the file. And oh, it might need this other file that I was working on a couple minutes ago. And oh, by the way, it might need this website and this package from last month. And so you have to think to yourself like, oh, I'm going to go find and aggregate all those bits of context, manually copy and paste it in, and then hope that it has everything it needs, right? Versus the Copilot with live context and pieces, it's a bit different, right? It already has everything, you need, right? Because it's been aggregating this over time, and then it kind of figures that out, right, based on your prompt. And so, yeah, pretty exciting. I will say as well, live context right now is kind of the early gen of this. It's really, really accurate within the last like 15 to an hour or so, 15 minutes to an hour. And we have some really awesome upgrades, not only making it faster, obviously more secure and private, aka encryption, which would be really awesome, and use less memory, but also to have really, really great accuracy for up to 2 to 3 weeks. And so, in our world, the challenge is how do you store kind of a year of information at the right level of granularity in about 1 gigabyte or 2 gigabytes of data, right? And then make this accessible for retrieval and accessible for proactive suggestions as well. But either way, how about we get into some demos and then we can go through it.
Let's do it.
Nice. So yeah, I'll start with, I'll go ahead and kind of share my screen here. We'll start with that. That'll be helpful.
It's a good step one.
Yeah.
Cool.
Fantastic. So I'll go ahead and I'll kind of pull up pieces and I'll kind of show people the couple of phases that I was actually working on. Looks like Pieces saved some one-liners for me last night. But yeah, let me go ahead and pull up a slide right out of our Series A partner presentation. Fun fact, we did just raise a really solid Series A financing round. So we are looking good for the next year or so until we got to go do it again and raise our Series B. But plenty of capital to build some world-class technology here. But yeah, as I was mentioning, I've kind of got these phases that I discussed earlier up, right? Phase 1 is a place for you to save, right? And it's kind of AI powered, it enriches things and so on. Phase 2 was those Copilot chats. Phase 3 is the pattern engine, augmenting phase 1 and phase 2. And we'll touch on phase 4, which is the Copilot feeds coming out late in August at the back half of this. And I'll just go ahead and show you, where all this began a couple of years ago for so many developers out there. So I'll pull up my, documentation, and maybe I'm taking a look at, this image picker package, right? And so many developers to date, they kind of, give it a browse. They're taking a look at it. They see a bit of code. They're like, okay, this is a pretty interesting implementation. I could see myself using it. And it's so funny because we always joke that like a code snippet is worth 1,000 words, kind of like an image is worth 1,000 words. But you can learn so much about a package and like the developer experience of using that package, how clean is the API and so on, just from a bit of code. And that's why a lot of developers for decades have been copying that code to their clipboard, opening up their Notes app, maybe it's a Google Doc, a Notion doc, whatever, and pasting it in. And this experience as it stands is pretty crude, right? You have to go through, you have to classify it, you have to say this is the language. And if you want to, have notes that are findable and searchable later on, you got to tag it and title it and deeply enrich it. That takes a lot of work. So we said, let's just start by reimagining the copy and paste and what that enrichment looks like in the world of AI. So I'll open up Pieces for Developers here. I'm in the desktop app, and I'm going to go ahead and paste that same bit of code that I pasted a moment ago. And what you'll see is we automatically said, hey, that's not just text, it's actually code. And it's not only code, it's Dart code, right? So we did that classification. We've got a good amount of enrichment. I can show you, let me see here, Command Y. That's the classification. So you can see we're 99% sure that's Dart. And then we're going to go ahead and as well give it a title, right? Of course, you can edit this title if you'd like to. And then, you can basically flip it over and you can say, what do we have from an enrichment perspective? Well, we've got tags, we've got suggested searches that were generated, we've got descriptions, we've got related links to external documentation that'll get associated with this material type as well. And so we're doing a lot of work here. Again, all I did was copy and paste, and we're deeply kind of enriching it so that it can be found later on. And over time, developers save all different types of stuff, right? And the reason that this is important is the more you save, the more specific your Copilot gets, right? And so getting into phase 2 here, beyond saving all this stuff, and of course you have some nice search facilities as well. So you can see here's my other snippets and so on. We wanted to make sure that you could have Copilot chats to expand and ask questions about everything that that code snippet is related to. So right there from my saved materials, I can start a Copilot chat, and it's going to be grounded in this content. generating a nice summary, and already kicking me off with some follow-up questions, such as what is the purpose of my camera delegate in this code, right? And it's going to go ahead and explain this. One thing to note here is that we'll talk a lot about on-device here in a bit when we get into the implementation details, but the approach we took is whether you're a developer in a super kind of secure air-gapped environment, or you're a developer in open source and you want to use the latest of kind of the large language models out there, we wanted to make sure that you could bring your own large language model, right? And so if you open up Pieces, you can obviously use the OpenAI ones, the Gemini models, or you can use on-device models like Mistral, Phi 3. Llama 3 is actually coming out in a week, which is pretty exciting. So you can choose, hey, do I want this to be completely on-device, or do I want to use a blended type of processing with cloud capabilities? And that's super powerful, right? So for banking, for DoD, for medical industries where there's a lot of security, a lot of IP, and a lot of privacy requirements, that on-device capability is a big win. But yeah, not only can you kind of have conversations about things that have been saved to Pieces, you can, of course, start a new Copilot chat and go ahead and say, I'd like to generate a CSS clamp function with some relative sizes. And we're going to get some nice outputs here, maybe some explanations and so on. And as I was mentioning earlier, as Pieces generates these outputs, you'll notice we've got these buttons that are processing, and I can go ahead and say, save that directly to Pieces. So it's going to do that enrichment, it's going to save it, and now that's captured even beyond the context of this conversation. So pretty cool. That was phase 2, right? So generate, iterate, and curate, just kind of showed you some of that. We have some really awesome facilities inside of our IDEs as well. So we got Chrome extension, Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, IntelliJ, you kind of name it. We want to be wherever the developer is, and we want to have the largest level of context and understanding around the work they're doing. But phase 1 and 2, pretty simple. You've probably seen a lot of that stuff. Phase 3 is something that is not so simple. We've been working really hard on it, and getting this to work in real time on device across Mac OS, Linux, and Windows has been challenging, to say the least. And Mark, I'm sure you can comment on some of that, but certainly challenging. So I don't know if you wanted to comment any, inside jokes there, but hard work. I know Nathan and Leone just got it working for Linux. So big move.
Absolutely. Always an ongoing process, not only with just Linux in general, but also having to, get all of the workstream pattern engine for every single distribution available.
Yeah, it's heavy lifting for sure, but we've made some serious breakthroughs that set us up for the next 2 years in a pretty profound way, I would say. But yeah, let's see it in action. So the workstream pattern engine, as I mentioned, across the browser, IDE, and collaborative environments, it's shadowing me, right? It's keeping up with where I'm at in my workflow. It's saying, will I need this later? Might I ask a question in the Copilot about this material? Can we cache that? Can we aggregate that? And can we triangulate all of this information so that you have it when you need it without having to think, hey, I should have saved this. So the workstream pattern engine powers our first feature on top of it, and we've got quite a few more queued up. That first feature is inside of the Copilots, and it's something called Live Context. So I'll open up Live Context here, and I'll go ahead and kind of do a simple demo, then I'll kind of build in complexity all the way to a multi-window example. But I'll open up my email client, Superhuman, and I'll go ahead and I'll search for an email from Miko. And I know a couple months ago, I sent Miko this email. It was 721 Main Street, apartment 1307. That's my address. I sent it on April 9th, and I sent it, and that's Miko's email right there, miko@emerge.com. And so I'll just go ahead and say, what was the address I sent Miko and when? Also, what is his email? And it's going to do some processing. I am on a MacBook Air, so it's not a super crazy powerful device. Sometimes it's hit or miss. Classic live demos. Let's try this again. Although I am on staging, so we'll see. All right, we'll try this one more time. I'm gonna go ahead and copy this. And we'll see. You gotta love the last minute updates to the latest. All right, okay. Mark, any recommendations? Maybe
yeah. Maybe, yeah, a new conversation.
We'll try a new chat.
Live context. Yeah.
All right. What was the address I sent Miko? How about that? We'll start with the simpler one. And it is funny because I do this demo about 1,000 times a week. So yeah. And so I use the same questions every single time, but that's funny. You know, again, these are large language models, right? And sometimes the behavior is unpredictable. And I know we did some serious improvements to the performance and the memory stuff. So maybe that has something to do with it as well. Just has to kind of load it in. But either way, nevertheless, I got it right. Just took a couple seconds to kind of catch up there. 721 Main Street, apartment 3007. Let me ask, what is Miko's email? Let's see what we got here. All right, no worries. Well, we're beta testing live. We'll keep it going. But that's kind of the idea, right? Is like whatever the foreground application is, can we kind of pull out details there? I mean, there's a lot going on in my superhuman. There's a lot of details. You got the whole conversation, the date, the email, and so on. So sometimes it's hit or miss. And I'll show you, like, we're going to get into what's actually going on behind the scenes. I'll show you kind of how the foreground application is being processed, segmented, and so on. We'll take a look at that here shortly. But either way, I'll do another example here where I'm going to kick out to the browser. And maybe I'm looking at some documentation, and I'll pull up a package that I've been working on called native semaphores. There we go. And so, yep, I've got this package. Again, I'm going to kind of do the scrolling thing where, you know, I'm just checking out the platform support, use cases, maybe some getting started information here with some samples. And of course, the API reference, right? This one's pretty important. And so, you know, we've got some locking, some unlocking, and some disposing. Let's go ahead and open up pieces. And let's ask it a question. What was I just researching in Chrome related to semaphores? I'll just say native sem. Kind of use some short words here.
Yeah. And this is like a brand new package as well, right? This is like just released a couple months ago. So super new information.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it does know that I was actually working on my semaphore count test.dart file. And it does know that I was working with native semaphores and safe int IDs, which is pretty interesting because that is a unit test that I had open not too long ago right here. So right here in the semaphore count test, I was actually working on this last night. All right, let me try it again. What was the package I was researching in Chrome just now for native sem?
Yeah, I think I've seen this demo more times than I can count, but it's always great.
Okay, great. So you can see here, the package we were researching in Chrome was the native semaphores runtime native semaphore Dart package. Package provides a unified API. Okay, great. It has the platforms, Mac OS, Linux, and Windows. Exposes a native semaphore class for locking, unlocking, and disposing. So I'll say, yeah, how do we use this class inside of that native semaphores package? I do love the follow-on questions. I mean, like, to be honest, they get me out of typing stuff quite frequently. But here we go. So nice. It seems like it's starting to dial into what I'm looking for here. Fantastic. So we can kind of take a look here and we can see basically it says, you know, here's an overview. Here's a sample of how to use it. So we get our identifier. We get some isolate stuff. We start up the native semaphore. We lock it. We do some work. We unlock it. Pretty simple. Okay. Then we can see, you know, as well, it kind of got some of the key methods, the lock, unlock, and dispose, looking pretty good. And it's got some of the use cases as well. But one thing you'll note is I didn't actually copy and paste anything from that package. I actually didn't even go in and set the website link as context, right? It's just trying to keep up with me in real time here as I'm doing my work. And you'll note that it's doing the triangulation across things that I've done earlier in the day or last night to understand, am I talking about the package that I was working on, which is actually the same package in the IDE, or am I talking about the docs that I was just researching in the browser? So pretty interesting. I'll show another use case here, which is kind of that third pillar, GChat, Teams, or Slack, right? whatever's going on inside of that environment, right? So infrastructure stand up, and we've got some things that Mark was working on. So awesome stuff for the endpoints. We've got Joy crushing it on Sublime. We've got Robert, who's doing some stuff for Pieces OS installation changes. And doing a really fantastic job on our new syntax highlighter, which is going to be really granular and really performant. So super nice there. I'll jump over to Pieces and I'll say, what is going on in infra chat today? And I actually like to push the Pieces Copilot because I'm lazy. I don't want to type out like, what was I talking about in GChat in infrastructure stand up today, right? So I kind of like to use like slang words, infra chat. That's kind of how we reference it internally in the company. So you can see here, we've got some stuff from Rutvik. We got some stuff from Mark. I can say, how about the stuff that Robert and Brenton are up to? The other thing to note here is that this is happening at the operating system level. I do not have to be integrated or signed in with my Gmail. I don't have to have, kind of anything directly integrated, although we will do some integrations later on to get even higher levels of context. But yeah, so I guess to try to pick up on some stuff, we've got Robert here kind of testing this, and we got basic. So he's doing some build failures and some basic stuff in the Flutter Copilot. All right, let me try this out one more time. And again, it might just be like, how long is it being focused on? And if I don't focus on it for a good amount of time, then Pieces might say, hey, this is really not that important. But let's see. What are Robert and Brenton up to? And we'll see what we got. Sometimes it's hit or miss. Although I do like the consistency of the failed no specific information. At least that's like pretty standard. Yeah, same message every time.
That's right.
All right, no worries. We're getting I would say a probably solid 60% hit right now. I will say this is staging. So the live version right now, I would say this one will probably kind of iron out over the next couple days. The live version, like I said, I've done this demo like 1,000 times. It's really, really solid. So we'll take a look at that, but nothing like some live testing, right? There we go.
That's right.
There's also too like little tweaks and stuff that we always change with the prompt. Sometimes even just being like, hey, from GChat, like Savo mentioned, also, increases the success rate and all that sort of fun stuff.
Yeah, you can kind of specify.
That being said, that's the same with a lot of different like LLMs. But I know we have some stuff coming down the pipeline to also enable that stuff to be more configurable as well. Oh shoot! Dang.
It's all right. It's okay. No worries. We'll try one more, which would be in the IDE, and I'm gonna go ahead and throw an exception here. And then honestly, we'll take a look at why it's behaving like this. Like we're gonna go in, we're gonna look at the foreground application, what's getting segmented, what's getting captured. I don't know if we're doing any dynamic interval stuff yet, but that I know is coming down the pipeline. And that might be affecting it. We'll take a look. All right. So the last demo is this, right? You're in your IDE, you're in a unit test file, or you're writing some code or whatever else. So you can see here, I'm in a native IO project. I'm in this semaphore count-test.dart file, and I've got this unit test in front of me. So let me go ahead and close that. And you can see the group is testing semaphore counters within the current thread. And of course, we want to verify that it's a singleton. So what I'll do here is I'll actually just come in and I'll throw an exception. And I'll say, this is a demo for the live context in the Pieces Copilot. All right, great. And we're going to go ahead and run this. Right away, we got the exception, not implemented. This is a demo for the live context in the Pieces Copilot, and that was in the unit test of basically verifying that it's a semaphore. You can see we've got some other details here. We ran it with the ARM64 Dart SDK here, and we've kind of got a nice file path as well, so kind of verifying that. But let's pop over to Pieces and see what it thinks about the error that I just got. What is going on with the error I just got in IntelliJ? And let's see what we got. I know it's going to be a good one because it's doing some processing. Yeah, there we go. So, oh yeah, it thinks it's going on with the semaphore package right now. Well, I will say this. I mean, kind of shame on me because I'm actually building this package right now. Like this is literally the native semaphores package, and I'm actually working inside of it. Pretty surprised that yeah. I mean, like I said, this demo works 99.9% of the time, but nothing like some good QA live on an AMA. That's how you know we're a startup too. Like, we eat our humble pie, right? I'll tell you that. I get humbled all the time with just the product, the errors, building code. I mean, everyone in the tech space knows this. So, you can understand.
Can we do one quick double check? Can we just double check the status of the workstream pattern engine just to double check everything?
Yeah, that would be a kicker.
That would be a good one.
That would be hilarious. But let's go to settings. By the way, beautiful power menu that's been out recently. All these settings are smart settings, so they're ranked based on kind of how often you use them. But I'll jump over to settings. Go. There we go. Found it. And then we'll go to machine learning here. Ooh, the gray screen of death.
That could be part of it. I will say I was literally while you were doing that demo. I see Dan made a message. They're doing work if it is working for some people on production, but not in staging. So there's a lot going on in staging right now.
There is a ton going on in staging right now. Yeah, interesting. Well, you know what? Fool me once, live demos will be on production next time around. Either way, I will check that in the future. But for now, I'm going to need another update in the desktop app for sure.
I think there's also a way to toggle it via the search. If we just look up like workstream, I think. Yep.
Yeah. So we got this
on.
It's on. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, that's okay. No worries. I mean, I know we're hustling on some stuff, so either way, kind of get the idea. But the goal is, and I'll actually show you. I mean, every single time I do this demo, check this out. People can see what was the address to send Miko, what's his email. That's what we should have got. Was I just researching in Chrome, image picker? What's the specific use cases? Here it is. What's everyone up to in InfraStrat? That's so on and so forth. What's going on with the error I just got in IntelliJ. It should say, hey, here's the test file, here's the error, and oh, by the way, just like comment that error out and you're going to be good to go. But either way, we're doing a cowboy demo today on staging, so a little bit different results this time, but that's the fun of the game. No worries.
Absolutely. And I will say, while you were doing that demo in the background, I was using mine on production, and I have this open source package for kind of a wrapper around our SDK to make it easier to like build copilots. And I asked like, who have I been talking to about that package? And it went back to people from last week that I was talking to Discord.
Wow. That's wild.
And gave me the specific message. And it was like the channel in Discord, who they were, what they were saying. And it's like a whole list of people. So take that with a grain of salt. It truly is amazing.
It's amazing, and we're really pushing it right now. I mean, like, I know that the way we're retrieving information, we're doing a bunch of stuff on anaphoric referencing when you say this or that or just now or yesterday, and again, like trying to do all of this in hopefully less than a couple hundred megs of memory, right, as well, which is challenging in and of itself. I know that we're trying to get this thing to just be world class. I will say I was on with a user in Kenya a couple of weeks ago. And he had like an 8 gigabyte like Windows device or whatever, and he installed it, used the live context, asked it a question, and it worked. It did take a second. It took like 2 or 3 seconds, but I was like, bro, I have no idea how that just worked for you, but that's fine. And if it worked for you now, like in 2-3 months from now, it'll work even better. Let's get into some of the technical details here. Want to show you guys, kind of what's going on behind the scenes. Again, I am on a staging build because I do have the support directory putting out kind of the things that it's taking a look at. And so we'll be able to look at the prompts, how we're doing this, and so on. And Mark, if you want to kind of set us up with a high level of the pipeline, when we go from the foreground application detection to segmentation to an application snapshot to OCR and the continuation. But yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So right now, basically what we're doing with the workstream pattern engine is what it's basically doing is when you're on a specific application, what we're going to do is we're going to detect that, hey, this is your focus application. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a snapshot of that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to OCR that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the text there. Well, actually, also too, what we're also going to do after we take the screenshot is we do a little bit of screen cropping as well.
Yep.
So we're like, all right, we're going to look at some of the previous screenshots, and we're like, all right, this last one has this much overlap. So let's forget all that stuff that was on there, and let's just zoom into this specific spot, OCR that, so we have a little bit more accuracy. And then it also enables us to be doing some scrolling.
Yep.
So if you're working in a rather large file, or if you're working in if you're reading like a massive research paper, or you're scrolling through a really big conversation, that it will like continue to keep those conversations going, which is really awesome. And then post that, what we also do is we do a lot of, so post that we do some OCRing, and then post that, what we do is we actually do some sensitive detection. So what we're doing is we're going to filter out any sort of sensitive information, and that's anything from API keys, service accounts, XYZ, you name it. So that, hey, if you do decide to go ahead and opt into a cloud, not taking any of those secrets, and not one, feeding them to the cloud powered model, and then number two, we're not sending it over the wire.
Yeah.
So it's really important. What Savo mentioned is that everything that I mentioned, all those different technologies, all happen local on device. So yeah, nothing ever leaves your machine, even to do any sort of processing.
Yeah.
So the screenshot, the OCR, the sensitive detection, the screen cropping, all that sort of fun stuff, all on device. Super important for like security and privacy, specifically in those cases that Salvo mentioned, but also too, just being a developer that's security and privacy conscious. And then also too, I know Sabo mentioned that we'll go over some of those screenshots.
Yeah.
It's super awesome. And staging and debug, we actually go ahead and we'll log out every bit in the flow. So we're taking a look at the screenshots that are occurring. We're taking a look at like the text that gets extracted from all that sort of stuff, as well too, like when we're going ahead and we're asking questions to the conversation, we're able to see what sort of relevant context was used. But that's only in debug and staging for us to be able to track regressions and so on. However, once it hits production, nothing is saved on device. So that screen cropping of what I was talking about, we're only able to see that last image. We could actually go ahead and bubble up memory and increase memory a little bit more and take the last 10, 20, 30, but right now we're only doing one. But yeah, all of those images are just held in memory and then just poof, gone. And then beyond that, how we're able to like continue to reference those is we take the end result, and then we basically go ahead and, well, we do a couple different things. We actually store that text. And then what we also do with that text is we embed it so that we can use it for a bunch of different similarity algorithms and all that sort of fun stuff. So we can, solve a problem that's actually we're continuing to work on, but also to being like, hey, given the constraints of certain LLMs, token limit and all that sort of fun stuff, and performance and cost, we're just going to take the relevant bits. However, with the advent of additional LLMs and larger context sizes, we can actually either one, reduce the similarity, or what we can also do is we can just say, hey, we're just going to send everything. So all that sort of fun stuff. Yeah, the most important parts is that, hey, if you're opting into a local LLM, never leaves your machine, stays completely offline, turn your Wi-Fi on and off, and let us know how it goes. And then also too, all that prompting. There's so much different prompting given one model to the next, to the next, to the next. There's also a bunch of prompting that we're continuing to work on. to optimize for different LLMs. But also do a lot of different stuff coming down the pipeline. So if you're using like an LLM that's on the that's at the cut of the technology, just like the furthest out, we may have not had the perfect prompt for it. So enabling you as a user to be able to say, hey, here's a Copilot preset. I want to go ahead and change around some of these system prompts or user prompts and so on to work how I want to work, and ask certain questions that I want to do, and provide different contexts that I want to provide, in any different order.
Yeah. I mean, Mark, just to add to that, to kind of give people a super high level summary of what you just said there, in less than like 250 to 500 milliseconds, depending on your device, we leverage kind of like a couple of models, right? So first and foremost, just listening. All right, what's going on at the file level, the network level, and the foreground application? Excuse me. When we have a signal from one of those, like an app comes into the foreground, you're exactly right, Mark. We grab a screenshot, a segmented screenshot of that foreground application. That's super important to note. So it's not across all your windows. We're not doing like any video recording or things like that. Fun fact, video processing is extremely heavy, right? And so we're just trying to get really intelligent about when we do a quick kind of screen snapshot, if you will. And then also too, like most of what's on your screen is actually noise, right? And so Mark kind of mentioned we have some segmentation models that identify, let's focus on the URL. Let's focus on what's changing as I scroll or what's changing as I type. So we pulled a lot of inspiration actually from self-driving cars. I know that a lot of the algorithms are kind of similar to what Tesla uses to, diff and merge inputs from like 8 video streams. And the funny thing is, we not only chose on-device architectures for security and privacy. Of course, that's an important component, but think about latency, right? So if you are, taking the approach where you're dealing with videos or you're dealing with a lot of images and you're uploading them all to the cloud to get processed, and then you're getting them returned. Well, if you were a self-driving car, right, and you've got 8 cameras that are streaming up, you're going to be sitting at that red light for quite some time, especially if you're doing this over 5G, right? Which we all know is basically 3G. It was a total sham. And so that's why we said edge computing has that no network latency, inherent component. That's a big win for the real-time nature. But yeah, let me go ahead and get into it. And again, I want to reinforce that I'm on a staging build. In production, no images, nothing gets persisted to the file system, right? So basically it's in memory for that 200 to 500 millisecond time period, and then it's embedded. It's in the vector database. It can be queried for later on. And actually, fun fact, if you don't reference certain parts of the things that are in the vector database, we actually discard those after a certain period of time, right? And so, we say if we capture, a couple of hours of work and you only go and form a few patterns related to that couple of hours, we're just going to capture about 10% of that. The rest of it will actually get discarded. And so the things that are not, continuing to express themselves, they're not going to be stored and persisted long-term, right? We think that you're probably not going to need those things later on. But yeah, let me pull up my screen here. I will have to do some kind of digging because I'm sure that we've got a lot of good old screenshots going on here.
Yeah.
We'll go to while you're digging too, I think it's really important that decay. That decay is super important to keep things lightweight on the user's machine, but also too, it's like Savo mentioned earlier, reducing the noise, which is really awesome. And then another couple things too that I know that are going to be coming down the pipeline earlier rather than later, within the next week or two, is we're working on also these endpoints to be able to provide a little bit more visibility to what's being used as context with regard to the workstream pattern engine. So saying hey, I asked a question about XYZ. We returned, or we aggregated this context and we fed it to the LLM. This was the context that was used. Do you want to use it? Do you want to modify it? Do you want to delete it? Any sort of fun stuff there. And even potentially giving the ability to layer in some middleware of hey, this was the aggregated context. Are you green light on this? And then going ahead and sending that through. And right. I believe someone also mentioned it in the chat. But also giving the ability to allow or deny different sources whether that's like an application, a window, a URL, or as well a time range. So, hey, I only want this running 9 to 5, or I only want this running 5 to 10 when I'm doing my, my side projects.
Yeah,
that's right. And I'll also note, I mean, it's probably a theme that you picked up on, but everything that we do is very meticulously efficient. We don't do anything that everything has to be efficient because it's on device, right? To enable a device with 8 gigabytes of RAM to run this, you can't be constantly, watching the screen, processing it, sending it to the cloud, and then hoping that, obviously that it is efficient on our end, but not only our end, but your end, right? You want that quick response time. When you notice, you download a local LLM to use as your Copilot, it's more than likely going to be faster than, GPT-4o is quite fast now, but especially 3.5 before, it was taken quite a while, especially if you didn't have streaming built in, right?
Oh, yeah.
And at 10, 20-second response times on some of the responses just because of the stream output. So that's like why local is not, obviously security is super important for it, but it just adds another bit to our user experience.
Absolutely. And I think that efficiency will continue to be a trend for us. I know we'll take the last 5 minutes to show, kind of what's coming up in August and things like that, as we move away from Copilot chats, but getting into the proactive suggestion and real-time feeds. And if you think about efficiency in feeds that change as you change windows, I mean, our goal is to cut that from 500 milliseconds down to 100, right? And make sure it's really keeping up with you. But yeah, I mean, it's you just got to be really clever when you're doing some of this stuff with an online or on device first architecture, and then online capabilities secondary. Right. So I'll go ahead and show you here. Speaking of efficiency, I'm actually in my screenshots. I'll kind of go ahead and show you. Again, I'm in staging, so this is not available. This doesn't even go to the IO on production, but basically, I'm in the com.pieces.os folder. There's one of these across Mac OS, Linux, and Windows. And you'll see I've kind of got my pieces databases here. So here's all of my stuff around my formats, my hints, my websites, anchors, all that stuff. And I've got this support folder. And if you ever wanted to see what's going on with basically the Pieces OS, what's it doing, what's it communicating with, it's just doing a bunch of local host calls, right? To get assets, to get formats, to create Copilot conversations and things like that. You can see these logs. We do use these for support, but super transparent, if you wanted to see, hey, what's every operation that's occurring? But either way, specific to the pattern engine, I'll go ahead and pull up the screenshots that we took here. And I'll actually start over here on the GChat one. So Mark, this actually might be why I knew I kind of had a sense that something was up with the interval, but you can see I came into GChat, and this was the first foreground snapshot that we got, which was our trifecta chat. Mm-hmm. And then what you can see is as I began to navigate inside of GChat, it was taking a look at the things that were changing. So we've got some direct messages here, and you can see I was starting to interact with that over there. And then basically it's kind of saying, okay, maybe I scrolled in the conversations over on the left. And then you can see it picked up I clicked on infrastructure. So I took a look at some of the stuff that infrastructure was doing. And this is like a popover. So again, focusing on that, as well as, basically the kind of the things that I was scrolling here in infrastructure stand-up. So we've got some stuff with Sam, Mark, and Bishoy. Interesting how it captured the conversation summary. And then I got some other stuff around what Caleb's up to. I don't think it gathered that Brenton was checking that out. And then I jumped over to Pieces and I asked it a question. So, I actually think this is a case where we've over-optimized. But what everyone can see here is that we're very rarely processing all the pixels on your screen or all the pixels of the foreground application, right? We do as much as we can to really crop it down and say, what are the things that I'm focusing on? And this is a segmentation model that runs on device to then go ahead and very simply pull out OCR from this. So I'll go ahead and show you an example here. I can open this with preview, I believe. And inside of preview, I think I can actually select some stuff. And then maybe I can get the text. Yeah. So this is a native API that we leverage on Mac OS and on Windows, both straight at the operating system, hardware accelerated. And this has been built into the operating system for quite some time. And then on Linux, where we don't have a native OCR engine, we actually ship Tesseract, right? So if you're on an older version of Mac OS or an older version on Windows, we'll use Tesseract as a fallback model for vision processing. But then, of course, if we do have that native version, we're going to use it. So this text selection here is basically what's occurring. So Pieces then says, okay, let's pull out the text here. Let's do some processing on it. Maybe let's summarize some stuff. Let's create some patterns. Let's go and store this in the vector database. And then we discard that image, right? So very quickly, whatever these pixels are, they're just completely dropped out of memory. And now we're just dealing with text, which has its own challenges, but much better for long-term storage. So yeah, and then I think we've got a couple others. You can see, let me see if I've got the IDE example. Mark, perhaps what happened is maybe the workstream pattern engine perhaps crashed because it did not pick up on anything I'm doing in IntelliJ. Yeah. And then the next time, this is from our Google Meet beforehand. So believe it or not.
You ran an update on that? You ran an update in our D chat, right?
Yeah, and this might be a corrupted image. It's got 0 kilobits. Yeah.
Very interesting.
So that's super interesting. If I delete that image, actually, and I go here and I'll just delete these.
I wonder also too, if we just turned it on and back off, maybe there was some sort of disconnection with our vector database.
Let's try this. So let's do a scrolling example and let's see if it's picking up on this. So I'm in this package. We've got the top part here. And then I'm going to kind of start to scroll a bit. And okay, cool. Scrolling a little bit more. Nice. Scrolling a little bit more. All right, fantastic. Let's go look at those screenshots. So we'll go to com.pieces.os. Interesting. It did not crank out that folder, and it usually does.
Yeah, so it looks like probably just one of those cases where you may just need to.
Let me just restart it. I'm gonna do a little classic restart here. I really want to show people this stuff because it's wild. I mean, the segmentation model is, it was really hard to build. But let's see here. All right. Shout out to Kieran and Leone on the work they did.
Our machine learning team, they're world class. Yeah,
they really are. All right, let's see this. Pieces OS. If I can spell. OS. There we go. I'm going to launch that guy up. All right, close, and then we'll launch Pieces for developers. By the way, pro tip, so basically when I install Pieces, I actually rename it from Pieces to Pieces for developers, just in my applications folder. You can easily do this. Just a little pro tip, just right there, rename it. It's nice. But either way, let's check it out. So going to go back to the browser, try the scrolling one more time. So we got native 7.4s here. Okay, great. Going to kind of scroll some of this stuff. Take a look, scroll it again, take a look, API reference, interesting. All right, let's go and let's take a look at screenshots. Support.
Sometimes it also takes a little bit to boot up. Sometimes it takes roughly 15 to 30 seconds.
Let me try this guy out.
Yeah, let's turn that off and back on. That's a great idea.
This is some behind the scenes footage right here of how we work.
That is right. All right. So turning it on and off is a no-go. I believe that there might be something, honestly, Mark, in the desktop application that has to do with why that's grayed out over here as well.
Could be. Here also too, we can double check the status too.
Okay. So this is not grayed out anymore. Interesting.
Go to the machine learning tab.
Yep. We're gonna go.
Turn it off and then turn it back on or something. Yeah.
Let's turn it off. Cool. Pro tip as well, you can pause it for a certain period of time. So it looks like that was a little thing for Mac in the power menu there.
Mm-hmm.
But we're gonna see. Interesting. So I think, Mark, that might be something on the Pieces OS side.
Do you maybe want to just double check the endpoint in the browser?
Sure. Let's do it. And this is how you know it's local.
Yeah.
All right. So localhost 1000, is it WPE?
It's workstream _pattern _engine /processors /vision /status. So it looks like it's on.
Looks decent. All right. Well, no worries. Interesting. Well, either way, we'll take a look at that. It looks like it's on. I'm surprised that I'm not getting any refreshes in my folders here. So that could be some of the stuff that we just got in from the ML team. But either way, we'll take a look at it later on. At least I did get to show you all some of the screenshots, but I guess it was off for most of that demo. So the entire demo was just longer term context from like last night. So congrats.
That's right.
Another thing too that could absolutely be affecting this is the Flutter upgrade. So that current version you're on likely has a Flutter upgrade.
Could be for sure. But either way, so yeah, kind of went behind the scenes, showing you guys very explicitly like what we're trying to do, how we're trying to get this thing to work, right, and so on. I think with these types of products that are coming out, transparency is just the best policy, right? Like, how are we building this? How does it work? And so on. Of course, like, we don't want to give away too much secret sauce because we are a startup and there are companies like Microsoft and Google and Apple that are really trying to figure out how this is doing. And they're certainly watching us like a hawk right now. But I'll show you one last thing, which is going to be powered by the workstream pattern engine as well. That's coming out in August. I know the data infrastructure is already in on Pieces OS. So we're working on some UIs. And yeah, we'll cap it off with some final thoughts. Maybe there's some questions, but let's see what's up. Yeah. All right. So I'll share my screen. I mention this oftentimes on one-on-ones, and I kind of keep it in the shadows in the public forum, but we're actually very, very on schedule for some of this stuff. So I'm excited to show you, but to kind of recap, phases 1 through 3 are all about saving to pieces, right? So humans save to pieces, Pieces saves for you. You can obviously have a conversational experience with Pieces, but quite honestly, I think conversational copilots are a bit laborious. You got to type out your question, you got to go back and forth, you got to wait on a response. And so, for us, we said, what does the next evolution of all of this look like, right? If we're able to understand your context in real time, capture things for you, you're of course able to still traditionally save to Pieces as well. Well, the opposite of saving in our world is suggestion, right? And so in August, we're going to be shipping something called the workstream feeds or the Copilot feeds. And basically what this is a heads-up display for developers across the entire operating system. So it'll be available right up here inside of your Pieces dropdown, or on Windows, of course, down in the bottom corner, same with Linux. And of course, like inside the plugins as well. And what that means is, kind of getting into the feed, given your current context, of course, we can use that for context in a Copilot, but actually we can use that as a great kind of entry point to go and query things that are saved to Pieces and relevant to this current context. So if I'm looking at a Webpack config on the browser, can we refresh this feed in real time, call it 100, 200 milliseconds, to give you relevant snippets that you've saved, referenced, and reused, relevant links that you've kind of often visited when you're in this similar context. So, if I'm looking at Webpack, maybe I'm checking out ES Build. And then, of course, there's other specific components of Webpack that I'm often kind of drilling into. So related links is a big component. What website are you about to visit next? And then, of course, like Copilot conversations, either ones that you've had or ones that you might want to have to kind of expand on the topic here, right in place. Just send a question, fire and forget. Also related people. So who can I talk to about this context, right? So it'll say, I'm in Max Pieces right now, and it'll say, hey, talk to Savo. Savo knows about these Copilots, right? From your conversations in GChat, from your Git Lens information and the projects that Savo works on. And then, of course, building on repositories at large, it'll say, check out this marketing site project. It has Webpack inside of it that's used in production, right? Go ahead and take a look at that and reference that, right? And then when you switch context over to your IDE or over to your browser, or your collaboration environment, that feed will say, all right, we've got a new context set. Let's refresh that feed. If you get an error, it'll say, okay, we just saw an error. Here's everything you need to maybe reach out to someone and get help with that error, or look at the error and where it might be referenced on Stack Overflow. Like all of those like kind of next motions. That's our goal, is to give you that autocomplete at the workflow level, not necessarily only at the code level. And yeah, the workstream feeds are pretty crazy because it's kind of a do nothing, gain everything experience. I just have pieces running. I'm just navigating my work in progress here, browser, IDE, collaboration environments, and pieces is saying, hey, here's everything you need for this environment. And then the nice thing is you can drill down into this stuff. So you can say, for this link, show me everything related to that link. So snippets, people, whatever else. But pretty pumped about the feed. I don't know, Mason and Mark, if you guys have some thoughts on that, but super excited.
Yeah, I think this really helps. Of course, we all saw like the ChatGPT desktop app releasing and all of the Microsoft, Google, they all kind of came on to this new local first mentality. We've been doing this for years now.
Yeah.
And it's obviously great for the reasons we mentioned, privacy and user experience. But when you look at it from a feed point of view, it's great because we're able to pull everything, right? Like I mentioned before, if I'm Sava's example, Webpack, I maybe have talked to a team member about issues that I had with Webpack. We've all been there.
Boolean somewhere, right?
We've all been there. Yeah.
Lightning CSS, true. It's like
exactly. Or maybe I'm in their Discord server talking to some of the support people in some channel. I need that information to ground just as much as I do Webpack docs or the repo that I'm working in. And we've moved from the first iteration of kind of these chatbots where I can just get really cool answers and I can ask about the history, and it's like a really cool party trick. But then you moved into more of a, hey, I can actually paste something that I'm working on and I can actually ask questions about it. But now people are fine tuning models, but a more kind of available version of fine tuning, which we know now as RAG, you're able to essentially query against a database of information in real time at runtime. And that's where we're kind of moving away from now, where obviously we still have that RAG capability, but we're not even querying anymore. It's just going to be in front of our face based on what we're looking at, what we're doing in our workflow. So it's an amazing evolution to think, I remember ChatGPT came out my senior year of college, and it's been not even 2 years, right? It is amazing how fast this technology is moving. So that's the evolution that I love keeping track of.
Yeah. And I would just add, ever since our seed round, and kind of the initial institutional capital, like the feed's been in board decks for probably 2.5 years now. Like, I mean, we're just like, get to the Jarvis for developers, right? Get to that Iron Man heads up display, incoming missile, right? Like, activate smoke, whatever else, right? Like, we're like, an incoming missile in our world is a big red error in your console, right? And it's like, here's the links, here's everything you need, etc. Super excited about what this will look like in Team and Enterprise. Really going to be awesome there, where maybe you solved an error, you talked to some people about it, you referenced some projects, you looked at some links, and then Mark gets that error 2 months later. Maybe elements from your feed can show up in Mark's feed to help him out. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be pretty solid. Mark, what are your thoughts capping off here?
Oh man, I absolutely love the feed. Very, very excited about it. We do have a V1 algorithm ready to go. There's a couple more minor components in the flow, but yeah, we're working on it. Coming down the pipeline, as well too, just being able to like very thematically just be like looking at a doc site, be able to navigate through that doc site and so on, and then bounce back over to your IDE, and then boom, every single one of those code blocks that was in there is highly relevant and contextualized by what you're currently looking at in the IDE, surface to you, but also to anything that's similar. So taking those code blocks, taking those websites and so on, and bubbling up similar ones that either you had saved or what Savo mentioned in the collaborative space that somebody else on your team may have also seen. So being able to use some of these, not only like the live context, but also being able to use some of these integrations and some of the highly contextualized information that we get from there to further ground whatever we're looking at within this feed. But I love it. It's the do nothing, gain everything. Absolutely love that.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Very excited as well. You know, beyond the passive information aggregation, right? Like we'll get into the agentic world as well, where you say, what's going on in the infrastructure chat? Okay, can you send my update, right? And that's where you're going to be logged into Google. It'll send you an update on your behalf and things like that. You know, I'm really excited about the longer term memory for the workstream pattern engine. Clearly, we're experiencing some short term memory loss, at least on my instance. So we'll get that fixed. But the longer term memory is sweet, right? You're like, when was the last time I ran into this error, right? And then what were the sites that I was visiting at that point in time, right? So you're going to be able to build really kind of abstract but temporally grounded questions just right there inside of the Copilot. I would say we're a solid, you know, especially from the on-device perspective, running on Mac OS, Linux, and Windows. You know, fact number one, you don't need to buy a new computer to leverage these capabilities. And fact number two, you know, I'd say we're probably about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ahead of where some of these other players are. And number three is we're not going to be breaking the bank because all this stuff runs on device. We don't have to pay a ton of cloud costs to process everyone's data all the time, right? And so building a super efficient product, and that's one of the reasons we're able to keep it free for so long is we've got that institutional capital. We're building a really good business model. Excited about the paid plans and the team and enterprise stuff coming later in the year. But for now, just trying to build a world-class experience. So, yeah.
I completely agree. I'm super excited for the end of this year. And I know even when I first joined here almost a year and a half ago, I think our daily user count was probably 1,000th of the amount it is today. So it's been crazy to watch the evolution of not only the product, but, you know, the team and our user base. And, you know, we're only going up. So it's going to be an awesome ride. And we have a big announcement day coming up on July 10th. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Product hunt, everything's going on, live streams everywhere. So that'll be super fun.
And some pretty wild features too. We'll have deep linking in the Copilot chats where if you're talking about a person, a website, or a file, you'll be able to click that, open that in IntelliJ, open it in Finder, maybe open it in the browser if it's a website. I think deep linking is going to be crazy. It's just one of those small experiences where if it says semaphore count test.dart, I want to click that, right? And that's just going to be really, really nice. It just feels like a part of the operating system. So super excited. And I will say special updates coming to the plugins as well. We have found a way to basically take the Flutter application that is in the desktop and unify that across all the plugins. So they'll all get the same updates at the same time, be the same type of UI, same layout, and some really, really great performance as well. So going to be rocking. Yeah.
It's going to be amazing. Well, I want to thank you, Mark. Thanks, Savo. Thank you, everyone, for watching. It's been a great live stream. It was awesome to show you a little bit behind the scenes, a little bit debugging as well, and just how our brains kind of turn throughout the day. But we'll be back very soon with another live stream, I'm sure. We have, weekly live streams with our head of developer advocacy now, and he's doing this Learn with Pieces series. So follow, all across our socials. We're always posting there. But thank you again for everybody watching, and we'll catch you next time.
Cool. Rock on. Thanks, everyone. Have a great Tuesday. Yeah. Happy coding.
Awesome. Bye.